My name is James Carter, and the day my company celebrated my 40 years of service was also the day I realized my only son had stopped seeing me as his father. The ballroom lights dimmed as the MC stepped toward the podium, smiling at the hundreds of employees, executives, and guests gathered inside the downtown Columbus Convention Center. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "today we honor a man whose integrity has shaped this company for 4 decades." The giant screens behind her filled with photographs from another lifetime. There I was in 1986 wearing an oversized hard hat. Another photo showed me standing beside coworkers whose faces were now gone from this world. Then came pictures from company picnics, volunteer events, charity fundraisers, and retirement parties where I had stood applauding everyone else. Today it was finally my turn. The applause echoed through the ballroom. I smiled politely, but my eyes kept drifting toward the front row. One chair remained empty. It carried a small white card reserved for Ryan Carter, my son. The camera followed my gaze. The audience followed the camera. Even before anyone said a word, everyone understood. The seat was supposed to belong to my family. Instead, it belonged to silence. The MC noticed. She walked closer with a gentle smile. "Mr. Carter," she asked, "would you like us to wait a few more minutes?" I shook my head. "No," she hesitated. "Would you like someone else to sit beside you?" I looked across the ballroom. Near the back stood a nervous young man wearing a navy blue suit that clearly wasn't expensive, but had been carefully pressed. His hands were folded in front of him. He looked like he wasn't sure he belonged there. I smiled. "Daniel," his eyes widened, "my late best friend's son." The audience turned toward him. "Would you come sit with me?" Daniel looked almost frightened. "Me?" I nodded. "Your father would have been sitting there if he were still alive." The room became quiet. Daniel slowly walked down the aisle. He sat beside me. I patted his shoulder. "Thanks for coming." His voice barely escaped. "I wouldn't have missed this." 5 minutes later, the CEO returned to the microphone. He smiled at me, then looked toward Daniel. "There is one final surprise." I frowned. I hadn't been told about any surprise. The CEO continued. "Years ago, James Carter quietly turned down several executive bonuses and asked instead that the company create a legacy fund honoring loyalty, sacrifice, and service to others." Murmurs spread across the ballroom. "Today," the CEO said, "that fund officially begins." He paused. "The first recipient was personally selected by James." Daniel looked confused. "So today," the CEO smiled warmly, "Daniel Brooks will receive an $800,000 legacy gift." The ballroom exploded. People stood. Some cheered. Others cried. Daniel froze. I think there's been a mistake." The CEO laughed softly. "There hasn't." Daniel covered his face. I simply squeezed his shoulder. "You earned this." 3 hours later, I sat alone in my pickup truck outside my small ranch house. My phone buzzed again, and again, and again. When I finally looked, 112 missed calls. Most were from Ryan. The rest, his wife Ashley, unknown numbers, old relatives, even reporters. I stared at the screen for several long seconds. Then I placed the phone face down on the passenger seat. Because the story everyone had just witnessed on television had actually begun years earlier. Until 6 years ago, I never imagined my family would drift apart. My wife Linda and I had built a simple life. Nothing glamorous, nothing people would envy online. Just honest work, cookouts in the backyard, camping trips every summer, Friday night pizza, church on Sunday mornings. Ryan grew up in that little brick house believing we weren't wealthy. The truth was, his mother and I simply believed money should buy security, not attention. Linda passed away after a short battle with pancreatic cancer. Ryan was 31 then, already married, already building his own life. Her death changed something inside both of us. For me, it created silence. For Ryan, it created distance. At first, I told myself that was normal. People get busy, jobs become demanding, marriages require attention, life moves forward. I understood that, I truly did. I never expected weekly visits. I didn't expect holiday dinners every month. I only hoped we'd still be father and son. Instead, our conversations slowly became appointments. "Dad, can I call you later?" "Dad, we're busy this weekend." "Dad, maybe next month." Months became seasons. Seasons became years. Whenever Ryan did visit, Ashley always seemed eager to leave. She wasn't rude, not openly. She simply acted as though spending time with me was another obligation squeezed between vacations, brunches, and social events. I never blamed her entirely. Marriage changes priorities. But somewhere along the way, my son stopped making decisions for himself. If Ashley wanted something, that became Ryan's opinion too. I noticed it in little things. He stopped fishing with me, stopped coming over to watch football, stopped asking for my advice. Even birthdays became text messages. Still, I never complained. Parents don't keep score. At least good parents don't. Then about 3 months before my retirement ceremony, our company announced something completely unexpected. The board wanted to celebrate employees with 40 years of continuous service. Only 2 people qualified. One had retired quietly overseas. That left me. The communications department wanted interviews, old photographs, television coverage. Our local news station planned to broadcast portions of the ceremony live because the company had become one of Ohio's largest employers. Honestly, I would have been perfectly happy with a handshake and a sheet cake in the break room. But the CEO insisted. "You've spent 40 years taking care of this company," he told me. "Now let us take care of you." A week later, I drove to Ryan's house. He answered wearing golf clothes. Ashley was loading suitcases into their SUV. "You heading somewhere?" I asked. "Weekend in Tennessee." Ryan smiled. "Before you go." I handed him the invitation. He opened it. His eyes widened. "They're televising this, apparently." He laughed. "That's pretty cool, Dad. I'd really like you there." He looked at Ashley, then back at me. "Of course, I'll be there." He hugged me. "I wouldn't miss it." I believed him, every word, because no matter how old your child becomes, part of you always believes the promises they make. I had no idea that only 24 hours before the ceremony, my phone would ring, Ryan's name would appear, and one simple conversation would change everything. Ryan's name stayed on my phone screen for several seconds before I answered. I already knew something was wrong, or maybe I should say, something had finally become obvious. "Hey, Dad." His voice sounded cheerful, too cheerful. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, listen. Ashley found this incredible last-minute deal." I didn't answer. "It's this luxury resort in Scottsdale," he continued. 5-star place. "We leave tomorrow morning." Tomorrow morning. The morning of my ceremony. I leaned against my kitchen counter and looked out the window. The maple tree Linda and I had planted 25 years earlier swayed gently in the evening breeze. "I thought your ceremony started in the afternoon," Ryan said quickly, "but we'd already booked the flights." "You haven't booked them yet?" I replied quietly. There was a long pause. "No." "So, you could still come." Another silence. Then I heard Ashley's voice in the background. "Babe, tell him they'll understand." Ryan lowered his voice. "Dad, we've both been working so hard. Ashley really needs this vacation." I smiled, though no one could see it. "I understand." "You do?" "Yes. We'll celebrate next week. I'll take you out somewhere nice." "That sounds fine." "You aren't upset?" "No. Really. I'm 70 years old, Ryan." He laughed nervously. "I guess you've learned not to sweat the small stuff." If only he knew. We said goodbye. The house became quiet again. I stood there holding the phone long after the call had ended. Linda used to tell me something whenever Ryan disappointed us as a teenager. "Don't react while you're hurting. Wait until you're thinking clearly." She was always wiser than I was. So, I didn't call Ryan back. I didn't send a guilt-filled text. I didn't tell him how much his absence would hurt. Instead, I opened my contacts and scrolled to another name. Daniel Brooks. Daniel answered after the second ring. "Mr. Carter, I hope I'm not interrupting dinner." "Not at all. I have a favor to ask." "Anything." There wasn't even a second of hesitation. That alone made my throat tighten. "My company's holding a ceremony tomorrow. I remember you mentioning that. My son won't be coming." Daniel became quiet. "I'm sorry. I'd like someone sitting beside me." Another pause, then he said softly, "You want me there?" "I do. I'd be honored." No questions, no excuses, no checking his calendar, no asking what was in it for him. Just, I'd be honored. I smiled for the first time that evening. Your father would have been proud of you, his voice cracked. I hope so. I first met Daniel almost 30 years earlier. Back then, he was just a skinny little boy racing bicycles down our neighborhood sidewalk while his father, Michael Brooks, grilled hamburgers in the backyard. I first met Daniel almost 30 years earlier. Back then, he was just a skinny little boy racing bicycles down our neighborhood sidewalk while his father, Michael Brooks, grilled hamburgers in the backyard. Michael wasn't just my coworker. He was my brother in every way except blood. We started at Franklin Industrial Systems only 6 months apart. Same factory floor, same impossible supervisors, same mandatory overtime. We bought our first homes within a year of each other. Our wives became best friends. Our sons grew up playing catch together. Some of my happiest memories involved Michael laughing so hard he couldn't finish telling a joke. He had this deep laugh that made everyone else laugh too. The kind of man who never walked into a room without making it brighter. Then came the explosion. It happened during a maintenance shutdown. A faulty pressure valve. Wrong place. Wrong moment. Everything happened in seconds. Metal screamed. Steam filled the room. I couldn't see. Something heavy crashed beside me. Then another. I remember falling. I remember thinking, this is it. But Michael didn't run toward the exit. He ran toward me. He dragged me across the concrete floor while alarms echoed through the building. Later, the doctors told me another 30 seconds inside that room would have killed me. Michael never spoke about it afterward. Whenever someone called him a hero, he'd shrug. You'd have done the same. Maybe I would have. Maybe I wouldn't. I'll never know, because he never gave me the chance. Years later, cancer did what that explosion couldn't. Watching Michael disappear one hospital visit at a time remains one of the hardest things I've ever lived through. The night before he died, he asked everyone else to leave the room. Only the two of us remained. He reached for my hand. Look after my boy. I nodded. You won't have to ask twice. He smiled. I knew that. Those were the last words he ever spoke to me. Daniel was 19 then, too young to lose his father, too proud to ask anyone for help. He worked evenings stocking shelves at a grocery store, attended community college during the day, delivered pizzas on weekends. Every time I offered money, he politely refused. I'll figure it out. So instead, I found different ways to help. When his old pickup finally died, I connected him with a retired mechanic who rebuilt engines for almost nothing. When he transferred to Ohio State's engineering program, I introduced him to friends who helped him find affordable housing. When he graduated, I was sitting in the audience. Not because anyone expected me to, because I promised his father. Life, however, had other plans. Daniel discovered he enjoyed mentoring teenagers more than engineering. He became a public school robotics teacher. Some people thought he was wasting his education. I disagreed. Every Christmas, he mailed me a handwritten card. Every birthday, he called. Whenever my gutters needed cleaning or my furnace acted up. Daniel somehow found out before I asked. He'd simply show up carrying a toolbox. Figured you could use another set of hands. That's the kind of man he became. Not because anyone rewarded him, because that's who Michael had raised. The next morning, I arrived at the convention center early. Daniel was already standing outside. He wore a navy suit that had obviously seen several weddings and funerals. Yet he stood straighter than many executives walking through those doors. You clean up pretty well, I teased. He laughed. It's the only suit I own. It looks perfect. He handed me a small gift bag. You didn't have to buy me anything. It's not much. Inside sat a simple leather-bound journal. The first page carried one handwritten sentence. Some men earn promotions, others earn respect. You taught me the difference. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. Finally, I looked up. Your father would be proud, Daniel smiled. I've spent 20 years hoping you'd say that. Before we walked inside, my phone vibrated. Ryan had posted a new photo online. He and Ashley stood beside a sparkling resort pool. Both wore oversized sunglasses, cocktails in their hands. The caption read, "Finally taking the vacation we deserve. Life is too short." Thousands of miles away, they were smiling. I quietly locked my phone. then turned toward Daniel. "Ready?" He nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." Neither of us knew that within the next 2 hours, the entire country watching that broadcast would witness a surprise none of us had expected. The ballroom looked even larger once every seat had been filled. More than 400 people had gathered that afternoon. Executives, factory workers, office staff, retired employees, community leaders, several local reporters. 2 television cameras rolled quietly near the stage while technicians whispered through headsets. Everything felt polished, professional, far more elaborate than anything I had ever expected. Daniel and I sat together in the front row. He kept glancing around as if he were afraid someone would realize he didn't belong there. I leaned toward him. "Relax. I'm trying. You look like you're about to take a final exam." He laughed. "I've spoken in front of classrooms full of teenagers. Somehow this is scarier." "Trust me," I said. "Teenagers are tougher." That finally made him smile. A few seats away sat members of our executive board. Most of them had worked with me for decades. Several gave me little nods. Others walked over to shake my hand. One by one, they thanked me for years of service. But every few minutes, someone's eyes drifted toward the empty chair that had originally been reserved for Ryan. Nobody asked where he was. Nobody had to. The empty seat spoke loudly enough. At exactly 2 o'clock, the lights dimmed. The audience quieted. A video began playing across 3 enormous screens. There I was, 27 years old, hair so thick I barely recognized myself. Standing beside the first production line I'd ever supervised. Another photograph appeared. Linda and I at the company Christmas party in 1991. She wore a red dress she'd bought on clearance because we were saving every dollar for Ryan's future college fund. I smiled at the memory. She looked beautiful. The next picture showed Ryan himself, 7 years old, wearing an oversized hard hat during family day. He'd insisted he wanted to work with Dad someday. My chest tightened. Funny how life changes. The audience applauded as each decade passed across the screen. 40 years. It looked so simple when compressed into a 5-minute slideshow. Only I knew how many missed weekends, how many overnight shifts, how many birthdays celebrated late, how many sacrifices had quietly filled the spaces between those photographs. The MC stepped back onto the stage. "James Carter has become more than an employee." She smiled warmly. "He became the standard the rest of us tried to follow." More applause. Then she invited our CEO, Richard Holloway, to the podium. Richard wasn't a flashy businessman. He'd started sweeping warehouse floors while attending college. Eventually, he became president of the company. One reason we'd always respected each other was because neither of us ever forgot where we'd started. He adjusted the microphone. "I've spent 31 years working beside James." He looked toward me. "In all those years, I've never once questioned whether he'd do the right thing." He paused. "Sometimes the right thing cost him promotions." The audience looked surprised. Richard continued. "He turned down executive opportunities because they would have required moving his family across the country." I smiled. That was true. Linda never wanted to leave Ohio. Neither did Ryan. So neither did I. Richard nodded toward the audience. He also refused performance bonuses on multiple occasions. Now I frowned slightly. We hadn't discussed that. He wasn't supposed to mention it. Richard smiled as though reading my thoughts. "I know James hates attention." Laughter rippled through the ballroom. "But today isn't about what makes him comfortable. It's about telling the truth." One executive after another shared stories. A maintenance supervisor described how I'd stayed overnight during a blizzard because several younger employees couldn't safely drive home. A receptionist told everyone how I'd secretly paid for her husband's medical equipment after his stroke. I hadn't expected those stories either. Honestly, I'd forgotten some of them myself. Because when you help someone, you usually don't keep records. You simply move on. Then Richard invited me onto the stage. The applause lasted nearly a full minute. Standing under those bright lights felt strangely uncomfortable. I would have preferred fixing machinery or organizing inventory, anything except becoming the center of attention. Richard handed me the Lifetime Legacy Award, a heavy crystal sculpture engraved with my name. 40 years. It suddenly felt real. He shook my hand. You earned every day of it. Then the MC returned. James, she smiled. We noticed someone sitting beside you today. The giant screen displayed Daniel. His eyes grew wide. The audience applauded politely. Would you tell us about him? I looked toward Daniel. He looked like he wanted the floor to open beneath him. I stepped closer to the microphone. His name is Daniel Brooks. My best friend, Michael Brooks, worked beside me for almost 30 years. Several retired employees immediately smiled. Many remembered Michael. He saved my life during an explosion at our old plant. The ballroom became silent. I continued quietly. When cancer took him, Daniel was only 19. I glanced toward him. His father asked me for one thing before he died. My voice caught. He asked me to look after his son. Daniel lowered his head. I never replaced his father. I couldn't, but I've watched him become the kind of man every father hopes to raise. The audience applauded. Daniel wiped his eyes. Then I added one final sentence. If anyone deserved to sit in my son's seat today, I smiled at him. It was Daniel. The room stood. Another standing ovation. Longer this time. Stronger, more emotional. I saw people wiping tears, including several executives. Just when I believed the ceremony had reached its end, Richard stepped back toward the microphone. Actually, he smiled, we have one final surprise. Richard reached into a folder. About 12 years ago, James Carter approached the board with an unusual request. He looked around the ballroom. Instead of accepting future executive retention bonuses, he asked us to invest those funds into something that would outlive him. The audience leaned forward. He called it the Legacy Gratitude Fund. Richard smiled. His exact words were, he opened the folder and read from a letter I'd completely forgotten writing years earlier. Money disappears. Character doesn't. Help one good person, and they'll spend a lifetime helping others. The room became perfectly still. Richard folded the letter. For years, this fund quietly grew. Additional company contributions, investment returns, private donations from retired executives. Today, he paused dramatically, it has reached $800,000. Gasps filled the ballroom. I stared at him. Even I hadn't known the final amount. Richard smiled. The agreement gave James one privilege. He alone would choose the very first recipient. Every camera turned toward me. Richard looked directly at Daniel. Daniel Brooks. Daniel looked completely frozen. Please join us on stage. He stood slowly. His knees visibly shook. When he reached us, Richard extended his hand. On behalf of Franklin Industrial Systems, we are honored to present you with the first Legacy Gratitude Award. $800,000. Daniel simply stared. His voice disappeared. I can't accept this. Richard smiled gently. You already have. Daniel looked at me, his eyes filled with tears. Why? I placed my hand on his shoulder. Because your father once saved my life. I smiled through my own tears. And because you've spent the last 20 years honoring his. The audience rose again. This time, the applause seemed endless. I had no idea that somewhere in Arizona, Ryan and Ashley had just seen every second of it on live television. I didn't leave the ballroom right away. After the applause finally faded, dozens of people surrounded Daniel and me. Employees I'd worked beside for years wanted photos. Retirees hugged me. Former supervisors, men who had once terrified me as a young mechanic, stood in line just to shake my hand one last time. I've never seen a ceremony like this, one woman from Human Resources said. Another employee laughed. I think half the audience cried. I smiled politely. I wasn't planning on any of that. I believe you, she replied. That's why everyone loved it. Daniel still looked completely overwhelmed. Every few minutes, he'd whisper the same sentence. I still can't believe this. I finally pulled him aside. Listen to me. He looked at me with watery eyes. That money isn't a reward for one afternoon. What do you mean? It's recognition for the man you've spent 20 years becoming. He shook his head. I don't even know how to thank you. You already have. How? You showed up. He looked confused. I smiled. Sometimes that's the greatest gift anyone can give. About 20 minutes later, Richard walked over carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to me. You okay? I think so. He laughed. I've known you a long time. Too long. You've been trying very hard not to think about your son. I sighed. Am I that obvious? Only 2 old friends. We stood quietly near one of the ballroom windows overlooking downtown Columbus. Finally, Richard asked, do you want me to have our media department remove any mention of Ryan? I thought about it. The television broadcast had clearly shown the empty seat. People would ask questions. News reporters love stories that write themselves. An elderly father, an absent son, a surprise inheritance. It was practically designed for social media. No, I finally answered. Are you sure? I don't want anyone attacking him, Richard nodded. But you also don't want us hiding the truth. Exactly. He placed a hand on my shoulder. You're a better father than most men would have been. I wasn't sure that was true. Good fathers don't always raise good sons. Sometimes, they simply keep loving them anyway. Daniel insisted on driving behind me to make sure I got home safely. He laughed when I protested. You've looked after me for 20 years. Let me return the favor for one afternoon. We drove north through afternoon traffic. When I reached my little ranch house, he parked behind me. We stood in the driveway talking for nearly half an hour. What are you going to do? I asked. About what? The money. He stared at the ground. I honestly haven't thought that far. I figured you'd already have a list. He smiled. My students. I wasn't surprised. Our robotics program barely survives every year. We lose kids because families can't afford equipment. He paused. I want every child who loves engineering to have a chance. Then he laughed. And maybe replace my 15-year-old pickup. I was wondering how long it would take before you admitted that. He grinned. It's making some very concerning noises. You've earned a newer truck. No. He looked at me seriously. My father earned that. Those words hit me harder than I expected. Michael would have smiled hearing his son say them. After Daniel finally left, I walked inside my house. The silence felt familiar. I loosened my tie, hung my suit jacket in the closet, placed the Crystal Award carefully on the fireplace mantel beside Linda's photograph. I looked at her smiling face. You would have liked today? For a moment, I could almost hear her answering. Then my phone began vibrating across the kitchen table. Once, twice, again, again, again. I frowned. Unknown number. I ignored it. Another call. Ryan. I ignored that one too. Then Ashley. Then Ryan again. The phone wouldn't stop. Finally, I picked it up. The notification screen seemed endless. Missed call, voicemail, text message, another voicemail. When I finally reached the top, I counted them. 112 missed calls. I stared at the number. Then my phone rang again. Ryan. This time, I answered. Hi, son. His breathing sounded rushed, almost panicked. Dad. Yes? Why didn't you tell me? I looked around my quiet kitchen. Tell you what, the money, the $800,000. Yes, you knew. I knew there would be a gift. You never told me. You never asked. Silence. Then, Dad, Ashley, and I are driving to the airport. I thought you were enjoying your vacation. We're leaving. No need. Dad, you've already spent money on flights. This isn't about the vacation. What is it about? He hesitated. He couldn't answer, not immediately. Finally, he whispered, I should have been there. I closed my eyes. Yes, I made a mistake. You did. Another long silence, then he asked quietly, Are you angry? I thought carefully before answering. No, I'm not angry. I'm disappointed. There was a difference, a very big difference. Anger usually fades. Disappointment settles much deeper. Ashley suddenly grabbed the phone. James? Hello, Ashley. I think we've all gotten a little carried away. What do you mean? People online are making Ryan look like some terrible son. I haven't spoken to anyone online. I know. But that empty chair, what about it? It embarrassed us. I took a slow breath. No. What? It didn't embarrass you. She sounded confused. You embarrassed yourselves. Silence, then she snapped. You could have warned us. I invited you. That's not what I mean. I know. Her voice became colder. People think Daniel deserves that money more than Ryan. I answered honestly. That's because Daniel was there. She made an irritated sound. So that's it. What? You replaced your own son? No. My voice remained calm. Ryan replaced himself. She had nothing left to say. She handed the phone back. Ryan spoke quietly. Dad? Yes. I'm coming over tonight. I'll be here. I love you. The words surprised me. He hadn't said them in months, maybe longer. I love you too. Then the call ended. Within hours, clips from the ceremony spread everywhere. Local television stations replayed the announcement. National websites picked up the story. Comment sections exploded. Many praised Daniel. Many admired the Legacy Gratitude Fund. Others focused on the empty chair. Complete strangers shared stories about parents who had sacrificed everything, only to be forgotten by their children. Reading those comments made me uncomfortable. People only knew one afternoon. They didn't know my son. Not really. Ryan wasn't evil. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't greedy by nature. He had simply spent too many years believing there would always be another chance. Another birthday, another dinner, another phone call, another ceremony, another tomorrow. Life has a painful way of proving otherwise. As darkness settled outside my windows, headlights finally turned into my driveway. Ryan had come home, but he wasn't alone. Ashley stepped out of the passenger seat beside him, and judging by the look on her face, this conversation was about to become much more complicated than I had imagined. I watched Ryan climb out of the SUV with his shoulders slumped, looking older than he had just that morning. Ashley climbed out after him, but unlike Ryan, she wasn't carrying regret. She was carrying anger. Ryan stood quietly at the edge of my driveway. Ashley marched straight toward the front porch. James, she called before I even opened the screen door. We need to talk. I unlocked the door. You better come in. Neither of them spoke as they entered the house. Ashley looked around my living room as though she'd never really seen it before. The same worn leather recliner, the same brick fireplace. Linda's favorite quilt folded neatly over the couch. The family photographs covering one wall. Ryan stared at those pictures for a long moment. There he was at 6 years old, proudly holding his first baseball trophy. There he was at 16, after getting his driver's license. There we were together on his college graduation day. His mother stood between us, smiling so brightly it still hurt to look at. Ryan swallowed hard. I haven't been here in a while. No, I answered softly. You haven't. Silence settled over the room. Finally, Ashley broke it. I'll just say what we're both thinking. Ryan looked at her. Ashley, no. She crossed her arms. $800,000. You knew Daniel for years. You could have at least mentioned something. I poured 3 glasses of iced tea and placed them on the coffee table. No one touched theirs. I didn't know the amount. You knew there was money. I knew there would be a gift. She leaned forward. And you chose someone else's son. I met her eyes. I chose someone who showed up. Ryan closed his eyes. Dad. Ashley turned toward him. Don't just sit there. He should have told us. Ryan looked exhausted. Ashley. He embarrassed us in front of the entire country. No. Ryan shook his head slowly. We embarrassed ourselves. She stared at him. What? He invited us. We said no. Her face hardened. So you're taking his side now? I'm taking the truth. The room fell quiet. For the first time since she'd walked inside, Ashley had no immediate response. Ryan finally looked at me. I owe you an apology. I nodded. You do. I'm sorry. I believe you. He looked surprised. You do? I believe you're sorry. I paused. I just don't know what you're sorry about. He frowned. What do you mean? Are you sorry because you hurt me? Or because everyone else saw it happen? He didn't answer. Not because he was stubborn, because he honestly didn't know. I stood and walked down the hallway toward the spare bedroom. When I came back, I carried 3 old storage boxes. Ryan recognized them immediately. I haven't seen those since… Mom… His voice faded. I placed the boxes on the coffee table. Opened them. He slowly lifted the lid off the first one. Inside were folders, receipts, old envelopes, handwritten notes. What is all this? Our life. He picked up a faded tuition statement from Ohio State. Across the top was his name. The balance had been marked. Paid in full. Another envelope held canceled checks, one after another. Semester after semester. Books, housing, meal plans. Ryan looked confused. I thought scholarships covered most of this. They covered some. I never knew. You weren't supposed to. He reached deeper into the box. There were mortgage documents, the down payment for his first house, the loan I'd quietly co-signed before removing my name 2 years later. There were invoices from his wedding, the photographer, the florist, the reception hall. Ryan stared at one receipt. His eyes widened. Dad, you paid for this. I helped. I thought Grandpa… No. He looked up at me. You never said anything. What would have been the point? Parents don't raise children to collect thank you notes. We raise them because that's what parents do. Ryan opened the second box. Inside sat dozens of photographs. Some were faded around the edges. One showed Linda sewing patches onto his Little League uniform after working a 10-hour nursing shift. Another showed me replacing our own aging roof because paying a contractor would have meant postponing Ryan's college savings. There were camping trips instead of expensive vacations. Birthday cakes baked at home instead of ordered from fancy bakeries. Not because we couldn't occasionally spend more, because every extra dollar had a destination. Ryan's future. Ryan picked up a photograph of Linda standing beside our old station wagon. I remember this car. It had almost 200,000 miles. You kept saying you liked it. I smiled. I hated it. He laughed through tears. Then why didn't you buy another one? Because the transmission replacement cost less than your freshman textbooks. His shoulders began shaking. He looked down at the photograph for a long time. I never knew. I know. The third box contains something different. Letters, dozens of them. Every birthday card Linda had ever written to Ryan before she died. Every Christmas note. Every handwritten message she tucked into his lunchbox during elementary school. Ryan carefully unfolded one. Her familiar handwriting filled the page. No matter how old you become, always remember that time is the most valuable gift you can give someone you love. His tears finally came. Real tears. Not embarrassment, not panic. Grief, regret. He covered his face with both hands. I've become the man Mom warned me not to be. No one spoke. The silence said enough. A soft knock interrupted the moment. I opened the front door. Daniel stood there holding a small cardboard box. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I didn't know you had company. It's all right. Ryan stood. Daniel immediately looked uncomfortable. I can come back another time. No, Ryan said. Please stay. Daniel stepped inside. He placed the box on my kitchen counter. I brought dinner. I laughed. You didn't have to. I figured after today nobody remembered to eat. That sounded exactly like his father. Ryan watched the exchange. He noticed something I don't think he'd ever noticed before. Daniel knew where I kept the plates. He knew which cabinet held the glasses. He even knew the coffee maker still stuck unless you push the switch twice. Not because he lived there, because he'd been visiting, helping, showing up quietly for years, while my own son had been too busy. Ryan looked at Daniel. How often do you come by? Daniel hesitated. I don't know. Every couple of weeks, I answered for him. Sometimes more. Ryan nodded slowly. You've been taking care of my dad. Daniel looked embarrassed. He took care of me first. Ashley suddenly stood. This is unbelievable. All 3 of us turned toward her. So now everyone gets to act like Ryan is some terrible son. No one answered. She grabbed her purse. I'm not sitting here listening to this guilt trip. Ryan looked at her. You should go. She blinked. What? You heard me. Ryan, I need to stay. For him. She stared at him for several long seconds before storming out the front door. The slam echoed through the house. Ryan didn't follow. Instead, he slowly turned back toward me. For the first time in years, he wasn't looking at me like an obligation. He was looking at me like his father. The next several weeks changed more than I ever expected. Not because money had changed hands, because truth finally had. Ryan began showing up, at first, awkwardly. Every Saturday morning, he'd knock on my front door carrying coffee. No speeches, no dramatic apologies, just, "Morning, Dad." Sometimes we'd sit on the porch talking about baseball. Sometimes we'd replace loose fence boards. Sometimes we'd simply watch birds gather beneath the maple tree Linda had planted decades earlier. Healing doesn't usually arrive in one emotional conversation. It arrives in ordinary Saturdays, one after another. Ashley rarely came with him. When she did, the tension never lasted long. She seemed quieter than before, less defensive. One afternoon, while Ryan helped me organize the garage, he stopped beside my old toolbox. "I remember this. You should. You dropped it on your foot, teaching me how to change brake pads." I laughed. "You cried harder than I did. I thought I'd broken your foot." "You almost did." For the first time in years, our laughter sounded effortless. Weeks later, Ryan asked a question I hadn't expected. "Can I meet your robotics kids?" "My robotics kids?" "Daniel's students." I smiled. "They aren't mine." "You know what I mean." So one Thursday afternoon, we visited Daniel's classroom. 23 teenagers crowded around workbenches covered with wires, tiny motors, half-built robots. Daniel looked completely at home. He wasn't teaching engineering. He was teaching confidence. One nervous freshman finally succeeded in programming his robot to complete its obstacle course. The entire class cheered. Daniel cheered loudest. Ryan quietly leaned toward me. "I understand now." "What?" "Why you chose him." "I didn't choose him over you." "I know. I chose gratitude." Ryan nodded. "I wasn't very grateful." "No, you weren't." He accepted the truth without arguing. That mattered. Several days later, Ashley surprised all of us. She called me. "James." "Yes?" "I owe you an apology." I waited. "I've spent a lot of time blaming other people." She sighed. "My parents always solved my problems. I guess I expected life to keep working that way. I appreciate you calling. I don't expect forgiveness. I wasn't really asking for it." "I know, but thank you anyway." It wasn't a perfect conversation. Real life rarely offers perfect endings. It simply offers better beginnings. One evening, Ryan invited Daniel and me to dinner. Just the three of us. Halfway through the meal, Ryan stood. He raised his glass. "I'd like to say something." Daniel immediately looked nervous. Ryan smiled. "This is probably the first speech I've ever rehearsed." We laughed. He looked at me. "Dad, I spent years believing love would always wait for my schedule. I was wrong." Then he looked toward Daniel. "And you, I owe you thanks." Daniel frowned. "For what?" "For reminding me what showing up actually looks like." Daniel shook his head. "I didn't do anything special." Ryan smiled sadly. "Exactly. That's what makes it special." A month later, Franklin Industrial Systems announced that applications had opened for future Legacy Gratitude Awards. The program would now support teachers, caregivers, volunteers, ordinary people quietly serving others. Richard called me afterward. "You accidentally started something much bigger than either of us imagined," I laughed. "I've been accidentally doing things my whole life. Maybe that's why they keep working." One afternoon, Ryan arrived carrying something unexpected, a small maple sapling. I thought, he looked embarrassed. "We could plant another one." I stared at the young tree. Linda would have loved that idea. Together, father and son dug a fresh hole beside the original maple. Neither of us spoke much. Some moments don't require conversation. When the tree finally stood upright, Ryan brushed dirt from his hands. "I'm going to keep showing up." I nodded. "I know. Even after things feel normal again, especially then, because that's when it matters most." People often ask whether Daniel ever spent the legacy gratitude money. The answer is yes, almost every dollar. New robotics equipment, scholarships, transportation for students whose families couldn't afford competition travel. 3 years later, one of those students received a full engineering scholarship. He visited Daniel before leaving for college. "I wouldn't be here without you." Daniel smiled. "Someone once did the same for me." That's how gratitude survives. It keeps moving, from one life into another. Ryan remained close after that. Not perfect. No family ever becomes perfect. But present, birthdays, Sunday dinners, doctor's appointments, random Tuesday visits. He began noticing the little things, replacing light bulbs before I asked, bringing groceries, calling simply to say, "I was thinking about you." Small moments, quiet moments, the kind that build a life, not the kind that earn headlines. As for Ashley, she slowly found her own way back. She volunteered with Daniel's robotics team, mostly behind the scenes, fundraising, organizing events, driving students to competitions. One afternoon, I watched her helping a nervous 12-year-old tighten the wheels on a robot. She looked happier than I'd ever seen her. Sometimes, people don't change because they're forced to. They change because they're finally shown a better example. 5 years passed more quickly than I ever imagined. Retirement suited me better than I expected. The mornings were slower. The coffee tasted better. The calendar stayed mostly empty. Yet somehow, my days felt fuller than when I had been working 60-hour weeks. Every Thursday afternoon, I visited Daniel's robotics workshop. Not because he needed help, mostly because I enjoyed watching young people discover what confidence looked like. Sometimes I'd tighten a loose bolt. Sometimes I'd sweep the floor after competitions. Sometimes I'd simply sit quietly while students proudly explained projects far more complicated than anything I understood. Daniel always introduced me the same way. "This is James." He taught me what showing up means. Every single time, I corrected him. "No, your father taught both of us." The students probably grew tired of hearing that story. I never did. Ryan kept his promise. He never stopped showing up. Not after the headlines faded. Not after people stopped talking about the legacy gratitude fund. Not after life returned to ordinary routines. If anything, he became even more dependable. Sunday dinners became tradition again. Some weeks happened at my house, some weeks at his. Ashley usually made dessert. She eventually admitted her apple pie had originally come from a grocery store bakery. We laughed so hard, she nearly dropped the plate. The following Christmas, Ryan handed me a small wrapped package. Inside sat a simple wooden picture frame. It held 2 photographs. One showed Linda holding Ryan as a toddler. The second showed Ryan helping me plant the young maple tree. Across the bottom, a small engraved plaque read, "The best inheritance wasn't money, it was another chance." "I don't mind admitting," I cried. A few months later, Daniel received another surprise. One of his former students, the young man who'd earned that engineering scholarship, returned after graduating from college. Not alone, he brought 6 co-workers with him. Together, they announced the creation of a scholarship fund for future robotics students. When Daniel asked why, the young engineer smiled. "Someone invested in me, so now I'm investing in someone else." That may be the greatest return on investment I've ever witnessed. The Legacy Gratitude Fund continued growing too. By its 10th anniversary, it had helped teachers, nurses, foster parents, volunteer firefighters, ordinary neighbors quietly changing lives without expecting applause. Every year, new recipients stood on that same stage. Every year, someone cried. Every year, someone promised to pass kindness forward. That's how legacies survive. Not inside bank accounts, inside people. One autumn afternoon, Ryan and I sat beneath the maple trees. The original one Linda planted had become enormous. The younger one we'd planted together now reached above the roofline. Funny how trees resemble families. They grow slowly, almost invisibly, until one day, you suddenly realize how much they've changed. Ryan looked toward me. "Dad? Yes? Do you ever wish things had happened differently?" I thought about that for a long moment. Then I smiled. "No." He looked surprised. "Really?" If you'd asked me 5 years ago, my answer would have been different. But if everything hadn't happened exactly the way it did, you might never have realized what really mattered. He nodded quietly. I almost lost you. You almost lost yourself. Those words stayed with him. I could see it, because sometimes the greatest danger isn't losing another person. It's becoming someone you never intended to become. That evening, before Ryan drove home, he hugged me. Not the quick, distracted hugs people exchange out of habit. A real one. The kind fathers remember long after it ends. As I watched his taillights disappear down the street, I thought about Michael, Linda, Daniel, Ryan, 4 different lives, connected by one simple decision. Someone showed up. Years ago, Michael walked back into a burning factory instead of running towards safety. He probably believed he was saving one coworker. Instead, he unknowingly shaped generations. His courage saved my life. That life allowed me to help raise Daniel. Daniel inspired Ryan. Ryan changed his own family. Countless students found opportunities. Thousands of strangers donated to the Legacy Gratitude Fund after hearing the story. One quiet act, echoing farther than anyone could have predicted. People often imagine legacy as something enormous. Buildings named after you, statues, fortunes, national awards. I've learned something different. Legacy begins the moment you choose another person's future over your own convenience. Sometimes, it looks like carrying someone out of a burning building. Sometimes, it looks like raising another man's son. Sometimes, it looks like showing up for an elderly father on an ordinary Saturday morning with nothing more than 2 cups of coffee. The size doesn't matter, the choice does. If this story leaves you remembering only one thing, I hope it's this. Money eventually disappears. Awards gather dust. Even photographs slowly fade. But every act of gratitude, every sacrifice, every ordinary kindness continues living inside the people whose lives it touches, long after we're gone. And perhaps that's the greatest inheritance any parent or any friend could ever leave behind. If this story meant something to you, take a moment today to call someone who once sacrificed for you. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Because love rarely disappears all at once. It usually fades. One missed visit, one unanswered phone call, one postponed conversation at a time. If James, Ryan, Daniel, and Michael's journey reminded you that gratitude is something we choose every day, please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear, who is someone you'll never stop being grateful for? And if stories like this remind you of the values that truly matter, family, loyalty, kindness, and showing up when it counts, consider subscribing. There are many more stories waiting to be told. Until next time, take care of the people who once took care of you. One day, you'll be grateful that you did.